to there. Everything started changing the moment you showed up.
The story starts with a man waking up in a dark elevator, not being able to remember who he is or where he came from. Panic grips him as he fumbles to escape, but the elevator surges upward, unstoppable, until it screeches to a halt. Above him, the hatches groan open, spilling blinding light into the confined space. Figures loom above, men with hardened faces. They pull him out, their laughter echoing, rough hands shoving him to the ground. Staggering to his feet, the man stumbles away, but dizziness betrays him, and he collapses. When his senses finally steady, a terrifying realization sets in. Towering walls rise around him, impossibly high, forming an inescapable perimeter. The men drag him to a cell and retreat, leaving him alone to wrestle with his confusion. Soon, a figure approaches, a man named Albie, their leader. To ease his confusion, Albie takes him on a tour of their makeshift community. He explains that every month, the elevator delivers supplies and a new person. Along the way, Albie introduces Newt, his second in command. Finally, they ascend to a vantage point, where Albie gestures toward a massive exit in the walls. The man stares, curiosity and unease warring within him. Albie's warning is firm: never leave this area, no matter what. But the temptation gnaws at him. Ignoring Albie's words, the man approaches the exit, only to be intercepted by a boy named Chuck. Chuck pleads with him to follow the rules, but before long, a commotion erupts, runners sprinting back through the gates. Chuck explains their purpose. Only runners, experienced and swift, dare venture into the unknown. Undeterred, the man edges closer, only to be shoved back by a tall, intimidating figure, Gally. Gally's fury at the breach of rules sparks a crowd, tension mounting until Albie intervenes. But their argument is cut short by an ominous sound. The colossal doors of the exit begin to close, grinding together with finality as night falls. The man's blood chills at the thought of being trapped outside. Later, the settlement comes alive with celebration. A bonfire crackles, people laugh, and the weight of survival lifts, if only for the night. Yet, the man feels no joy. Newt joins him and reveals the truth. Beyond the walls lies a shifting maze, teeming with monstrous creatures called Grievers. The runner's mission is perilous: to map the maze, evade the Grievers, and find an escape. The man's unease deepens as he absorbs the danger, his determination to uncover the truth growing stronger. The creatures emerged only at night, and anyone caught outside after sunset was doomed. Newt tried to coax the main character into joining the celebration, but their paths soon crossed with Gally's. Gally challenged him to a sparring match. The crowd's energy surged, their jeers leaving Thomas with no escape. Reluctantly, he stepped into the circle, heart pounding as he faced Gally. The fight began, but Gally's strength was overwhelming. Thomas was thrown to the ground again and again, then a sudden jolt, a blow to the head. The haze cleared just enough for him to remember. His name was Thomas. A cheer erupted from the crowd, their excitement washing over him like a wave. But the celebration was cut short by a bone-chilling roar from beyond the walls, pulling everyone back to grim reality. The next day, while helping with chores, Thomas wandered into the woods, where he stumbled upon a haunting sight: a grave surrounded by scattered human bones. A rustle behind him made him whirl around. Ben stood there, his face contorted with rage. Without warning, Ben lunged, blaming Thomas for all their suffering. Thomas fought back, desperation driving him, and landed a blow that allowed him to flee. He ran toward the others, Ben close on his heels. The boys intervened just in time, subduing Ben and saving Thomas. But when they lifted Ben's shirt, their horror deepened. He was infected. The group made the painful decision to exile their friend. As sundown neared, they escorted him to the wall's exit. Ben pleaded, fought, but they pushed him out as the towering doors sealed behind him. The silence that followed was heavy with grief. That night, Thomas was plagued by vivid dreams. A laboratory flickered into view, a woman's face appearing again and again. One phrase echoed in his mind: "Wicked is good." He awoke, his chest tight with unease. The morning brought more questions. Albie, their leader, had left the safety of the walls before sunrise. Thomas pressed Newt for answers, but Newt reassured him that Albie, the oldest survivor, knew what he was doing. As night approached, unease settled over the group. The runners had not returned. The ominous groan of the walls began again, as the massive doors slid shut for the night. The reality sank in. Albie and the others might be lost forever. As the maze loomed ominously in the distance, Thomas caught sight of Minho, the runner, staggering toward the entrance while carrying an injured Albie. The crowd shouted frantically, urging them to hurry, but Thomas quickly realized they wouldn't make it. Ignoring every rule, he dashed into the maze, his determination outweighing his fear. When he finally reached them, Minho's reaction was far from grateful. He sarcastically commended Thomas for killing himself, revealing that Albie had been stung by a Griever. Left with no options, the three devised a desperate plan. Minho helped hoist Albie onto the wall, hoping to keep him safe, but then the sound of approaching creatures sent Minho fleeing. Thomas, left alone with Albie, hid behind the vines as a griever crawled ominously past. Believing the danger had passed, Thomas took his chance, tying Albie securely onto the wall. But then a chilling sensation ran down his spine. A foul liquid dripped onto his shoulder. Before he could react, a massive griever landed in front of him, its furious scream echoing through the maze. Thomas bolted, the creature hot on his heels, using the maze's towering walls for cover. Cornered at a dead end, Thomas turned to the vines, scaling the wall as the griever pursued him relentlessly. He climbed higher, leaping between walls in a desperate bid for survival. But his escape led him to a cliff with nowhere to run. As the monster closed in, Thomas had no choice. He launched himself toward an adjacent wall, the griever leaping after him. Their struggle sent them tumbling, but Thomas landed in the plants below, which ensnared the creature like a trap. Breathing heavily, Thomas stumbled forward and, to his relief, found Minho, who had returned to help. Together, they made their way toward a moving wall, planning to lose the griever in the shifting maze. Thomas devised a bold plan: lure the creature toward them and let the maze itself finish the job. Running with every ounce of strength, Thomas led the griever into the closing walls, just barely escaping as the crushing stone sealed its fate. The next day, the settlement waited anxiously. When Thomas and Minho returned, carrying Albie with them, relief swept through the crowd. Minho spoke. Thomas had killed a griever. The impossible had been done, and for the first time, survival felt a little less out of reach. Not everyone was pleased with Thomas's bold actions. Gally, in particular, stood firm against him, accusing him of breaking their rules and warning that killing the griever might provoke retaliation from the creatures. Their heated exchange was cut short by a sound, an unmistakable rumble. The elevator was rising far ahead of its usual schedule. The group rushed to the field, their curiosity and unease mounting. What they found shocked them. A girl unlike anyone the elevator had ever delivered before. Clutched in her hand was a note: "She will be the last one." Thomas froze. He recognized her face. It was the same girl who haunted his dreams. Before he could process the revelation, the girl stirred, screamed his name, and collapsed back into unconsciousness. The group was left reeling. With no more supplies expected, their survival was uncertain. Yet Thomas believed the answers lay within the maze. He convinced Minho to help gather a team and investigate the dead griever. As night loomed, they hurried to the exit and ventured deep into the labyrinth. When they found the griever's body, they worked together to pry one of its legs free. From within its grotesque form, they discovered something unexpected: a tracking device, its screen flashing the number 7. Alarmed but intrigued, they retreated before more creatures could arrive. Minho led Thomas to a hidden lair known only to the leaders. There, he revealed a disheartening truth. They had already mapped the maze completely, only to find no exit. But now, with the discovery of the device, Minho saw a glimmer of hope. He explained the maze's pattern, how certain walls on the edges moved in sequence to open new areas. He believed the number 7 might point to a secret location where the grievers retreated, a place inaccessible to humans. Before they could discuss further, a commotion broke out. Their friends rushed in to announce that the girl was awake. The two sprinted to the scene. The girl was hurling objects at the boys, refusing to let anyone approach. Thomas stepped forward, calling out his name to calm her. She only wanted to speak to him. As he cautiously approached, she revealed her name, Teresa. Unlike Thomas, she remembered only one thing: his name. Then, she reached into her pocket and pulled out 2 syringes, a mystery that deepened the questions already haunting them all. The symbol on the container caught Thomas's eye. A single word: wicked. The voice from his dreams echoed in his mind. Wicked is good. Hope flickered within him. Were these syringes antidotes? They hurried to Albie, knowing his chances were slim without intervention. Holding their leader in place, Thomas administered the dose. The effect was immediate. The symptoms faded as Albie slipped into unconsciousness. The next morning, Thomas joined Minho, determined to uncover the truth about Section 7. They sprinted into the maze, navigating its towering walls with practiced speed. When they reached the area, they found a field strewn with enormous blades. The beeping from their device grew louder, leading them toward an unexpected discovery: a large entrance, previously hidden. Cautiously, they entered, crossing a bridge that led to an apparent dead end. As the machine's screen turned green, the walls before them slid apart, revealing a small tunnel. The two ventured forward, but froze as lasers scanned them. Alarms blared, shattering the silence. Panic set in, and they bolted as the doors slammed shut behind them. Outside, the giant blades began to spin, forcing a frantic dash to the exit. Though they escaped the deadly blades, the floor beneath them started to give way. Walls collapsed and dropped in rapid succession, leaving no time to think, only to run. They finally spotted a small entrance, dove inside, and crawled through the closing walls, gasping for breath. Back at the base, the boys shared their discoveries with the group, only to learn that Albie had awakened. They rushed to his room and found him in tears. His memories had returned. Albie revealed a horrifying truth. They were being watched, and the maze had no exit. Before they could process his words, a commotion erupted outside. The gates, which always closed at sunset, remained open. Dread filled the air as the unthinkable unfolded. Grievers poured into the settlement. Chaos erupted as the creatures attacked, forcing everyone to flee. Desperation drove them to the cornfields, where they sought refuge beneath the plants. But the Grievers were relentless, hunting them down one by one. Those who survived sought shelter in the houses, only to watch in horror as the monstrous creatures demolished everything in their path, leaving no place safe from the terror. Teresa snatched a burning container and hurled it at the advancing Griever. The flames engulfed the creature, buying precious moments for the group to flee. But the victory was short-lived. The monster recovered with terrifying speed and resumed its deadly rampage. Thomas, determined to protect his friends, faced the creature head-on. His bravery would have been fatal if not for his companions, who launched a barrage of spears, stunning the Griever long enough for everyone to escape into the main building. They sought refuge within the shelter, but their hope was dashed as the Griever found them again. With a powerful strike, it seized Albie and dragged him out, leaving the others frozen in horror. Desperate, Thomas rushed outside, only to find that the creatures were retreating into the darkness. The silence that followed was broken by Gally, who stormed forward in fury, striking Thomas to the ground. He accused Thomas of bringing this calamity upon them, blaming him for the deaths of their friends. Racked with guilt, he took a Griever's stinger and injected himself in the leg, collapsing in agony. As unconsciousness claimed him, fragmented memories surfaced. He remembered being part of the team responsible for the experiment and that Teresa was one of his colleagues. When Thomas awoke, his friends were at his side, revealing that Gally had taken control of the group. Convincing the others that Thomas and Teresa were to blame, Gally had ordered their banishment. Before being taken away, Thomas confessed the truth. They were all part of an experiment, and their suffering was a deliberate test. Shock rippled through the group, but Newt, steadfast as ever, reassured Thomas that their priority was freedom. Gally's men escorted Thomas and Teresa to the gates. To the horror of everyone present, Gally intended not just to exile them, but to sacrifice them as an offering to the monsters. In a desperate last stand, Thomas broke free. Rallying his friends, he turned the tide, urging the others to follow him out of the maze where their true freedom lay. His revelations inspired many to join him, while Gally declared that Thomas was leading them to their deaths. There was no time to argue. Leaving those loyal to Gally behind, Thomas and his followers pressed into the maze. Their journey brought them to Section 7 and the entrance to the Griever's lair. A lone monster guarded the path, roaring with fury as the group charged. In a ferocious battle, they drove the creature back, sending it tumbling off the bridge. Their victory was fleeting, as more Grievers emerged from the depths, forcing a desperate retreat. Thomas and his friends reached the gates, struggling to hold the monsters at bay while frantically working to open them. Chuck and Teresa rushed into the tunnel, but the final door wouldn't budge. Their survival seemed impossibly out of reach. Teresa frantically examined the control panel, discovering it required an 8-digit password to unlock the final door. Thomas's mind raced, piecing together the clues. It had to be the sequence of the outer shell patterns. He shouted to Minnow, urging him to recall the order. As Minnow began reciting the numbers, the Grievers surged closer. The final code was entered just in time. The gates groaned open, and with a deafening crash, they slammed down on the pursuing creatures, crushing them under their weight. The group stood breathless, surrounded by the silence of their victory, before cautiously stepping into the dimly lit hallway beyond. Following a trail of flickering lights, they arrived at an emergency exit. Thomas hesitated, then pushed the door open. The sight that greeted them froze them in place. Corpses littered the room. The team ventured toward the center, their horror mounting as the truth became undeniable. Thomas's memories had been real. They were lab rats. Suddenly, a screen blinked to life, illuminating the haunted faces of the group. A woman appeared, introducing herself as Dr. Page. Her calm demeanor was a chilling contrast to the grim reality she revealed. She congratulated them on passing their final test. Page explained humanity's devastating collapse. Solar flares had ravaged the planet, claiming billions of lives. What followed was even worse. A virus known as the flare, which attacked the brain, turning victims into monstrous creatures. Yet, there was hope. Some humans, including everyone in the maze, were immune to the disease. Page's voice hardened as she described the reasoning behind the experiment. The group's immunity made them invaluable, their suffering deemed necessary for humanity's survival. But not everyone agreed with such methods. Soldiers had stormed the facility, executing the scientists in a brutal rebellion against these experiments. The group stood in stunned silence, their newfound freedom overshadowed by the devastating revelations. Before the group could decide what to do next, Gally stepped forward, blocking their path. It was clear now that he had been infected. With venom in his voice, he lunged at Thomas, attempting to end him. But Minho retaliated, throwing a spear that struck Gally down. The moment was brief, however, as the group quickly discovered the devastating truth. Chuck had taken the spear for Thomas. His lifeless body crumpled to the ground, and the weight of his sacrifice hung heavy on everyone. Their mourning was cut short by the sudden arrival of numerous soldiers. With force, they grabbed the remaining survivors, pulling them away from the site. They were dragged outside, and for the first time, they could see the remains of what was once civilization, ruins of a broken world. They were quickly loaded into military helicopters, lifted into the air. As the choppers ascended, the survivors looked down at the maze they had spent so long inside. What they couldn't comprehend, however, was that everything they had experienced had been staged. The entire ordeal had been a part of a carefully designed experiment. The woman, standing among her colleagues, spoke with cold satisfaction. The experiment had been a success, and the survivors were now being flown towards the next phase of testing. So what do you think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you next time.